Hello, Gramps. How are you?
Okay, Mikey, how are you?
Good. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to do my oral history assignment with me for my interviewing class at Youngstown State University.
No problem, bud.
So I'm just going to ask you questions about you, yourself, and stuff you have done growing up.
Okay.
So, for interview purposes, what is your name, age, and your relationship with me?
Okay, my name is Thomas Lopresta. My age is 83, and I'm your grandfather,
hmm So, what year were you born?
1940.
Okay. So, what was it like growing up throughout the 40s, 50s, and 60s?
It was a great time. It was a lot different than it is today. Kids interacted together more, spent more time together, outdoors, riding bikes, going to movies together. Um, Very unlike today's generation where everything is texting and just a lot of technology. There doesn't seem to be the kind of socialization in today's youth as there was back then.
Do you think a lot more people were happier back then than they were now?
I believe not having as much as they have today, I believe they were very happy.
hmm
Okay. Of course, today they're so far advanced today that they can't even conceive happiness from those times. That
hmm
would not be happiness to them, because they wouldn't have a cell phone. They wouldn't have a computer. Uh, they'd have a bike or a scooter. Or they'd make their own scooter out of an orange crate and a 2x4 with skate wheels. I mean, it was a different time altogether.
hmm Who was your biggest role model growing up, and what was the most valuable lesson they taught
Well, I was kind of partial to a young attorney who took an interest in me. Um, he gave me a lot of good advice. And the one thing that he told me is, Tommy, if you don't aim at something, you're not going to hit anything.
you? Right.
He said, you got to go through life looking every day how you can better yourself, what you can do to make life easier for you.
hmm
And it was pretty valuable.
How'd you end up meeting them?
I met him at a political thing. He was a campaign manager for a mayoral candidate.
hmm
And we talked and we just clicked. He was very much down to earth, and I really liked him.
hmm
Unfortunately, he passed at a very young age.
It's unfortunate. What advice would you give to your younger self?
My younger self,
Yes.
get an education, go to college, no matter what you have to sacrifice, get an education. Because as it turns out, in today's world, without that education, you're nowhere. Back then, an education wasn't really that important because we had so much industry in this area that you could walk out of one job and into another one. You could leave school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you can go down to the mill or to one of the manufacturing plants and you could work afternoon term and make almost as much money, if not more, than the teacher who was educating you in your senior year. It was that good.
It's kind of wild if you think about
It was that great.
it. What was your first job growing up, and what was your last job you had before you retired?
The very first job I had, I was about age 14. We had a company that was on the east side of Youngstown. It was called Wheeler's Mineral Springs and Potato Chip Company. It's no longer in business, but I walked in there one day and there was a woman there behind the counter, and I asked her, is there anything that I can do to make some money? I need a job. She kind of chuckled and she said, well, when they're peeling potatoes and they're washing potatoes and slicing potatoes to make chips, there's a lot of starch that goes into the bottom of the tank. And at the end of the day, it all has to be shoveled out of there and hosed down. And she gave me that job. They paid me $1 and a bag of potato chips. And back then, that dollar went pretty far.
Yeah.
I could go to the movies, I could buy popcorn, I could buy soft drink. It was a double feature, and I had money left over. Those were different times.
Yeah.
My last job was I was vice president of Hollander Food Service food service distributing company. I retired from there at age 46 to venture into my own desires to be in business for myself, investing in real estate. I had been investing in the stock market for a number of years prior to that, and fortunately did well. And I was able to continue to buy properties um, in Pennsylvania, in Florida, in Ohio. And to this day, I'm still involved pretty much with real estate rentals.
What was the biggest lesson you learned from making investments?
Be consistent. Be consistent. You have to pay yourself. You have to pay yourself first. You have to save. You have to have a good eye, look out for things, watch what's happening, watch what's going on, and try to take advantage of what's happening during those times.
Mm-hmm. And since you were in the workforce for so long, what was the biggest lesson you learned from other people that were in the workforce with you, whether they be at a lower level than you or a higher level than you?
You have to have some persistence and determination to want to better yourself. If you're satisfied to go to work 8 to 4, come home, read the paper, and then do the same thing the next day, you'll make enough money to make a living, but you'll never really make any money.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get out there and you got to get whatever you can. I always believed, and I've always told my children, it's a big wide world out there, and anything that you need or want is out there for the taking if you know how to get it. If you're smart enough to earn it, it's there. But nobody's going to give you anything.
Right. What was the most significant event that occurred within your life?
Well, I think when I started raising a family at a young age,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that was a big responsibility. And at that point in my life, things were not really great with work. We were in a recession. It was in 1959, 1960. Things were a little tough. And I had to get out there and make a dollar any way I could. If it meant picking up junk, if it meant digging a ditch, helping paint, put on a roof, whatever I had to do to put food on the table is what I did.
And that's why you couldn't go get an education, because you were too busy trying to provide for that
Well,
family.
sometimes that's a tough thing. You know, education back then was not as expensive as it is today.
Right.
But there were no grants, there were no loans. The only way you got into college, if you didn't have the money to pay your way through, was if you got a scholarship.
Right.
And unfortunately, I wasn't that great in school to get that kind of a scholarship.
Right.
I was an average student.
So, since you've been a father for so many years, what was the biggest lesson that you've learned from being a father?
Well, you have a lot of responsibilities being a father, is to watch over your children and make sure that they grow up right. Be mindful of who they associate with. Be mindful of where they go.
Mm-hmm.
And I always liked my daughters under my watchful eye. I didn't prevent them from taking part in school activities. They were all majorettes. They all took part in school plays and functions. But in their off time, I put in a pool so that I would have them there under my eye. Their friends could come over and spend time there and have a good time, and I still could see who their friends were, keep an eye on what was going on. And it worked well.
Mm-hmm.
It worked well.
What's a quote that you live by day?
Well, I'll tell you something that's always impressed me was a quote, press on. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education alone will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
If you see something you want, go after it. Be persistent, be determined, and you'll be successful.
And for the last question, what kind of legacy do you wish to leave behind for the future generations, such as myself?
Work hard, get a good education, do what you love. When you love what you do, you'll always be happy. There isn't anything worse than doing a job that you don't like, but you do it because you need to make a living. You want to do it because you love what you do. Get an education, be persistent, be determined, and you'll succeed.
That's about it.
Okay.
That wraps it up. Grandpa, thank you for doing this interview.
You're
with
welcome,
me.
Mikey. My pleasure.
I appreciate it very much. And yeah, that's it.